The air in the Crown and Anchor didn't just go quiet, it turned to ice. The kind of silence that makes men check their exits and women reach for their phones, fingers hovering over 911 but never quite dialing, because in this part of Manhattan, calling the cops only makes things worse. Thea Ashford stood in the center of that frozen moment, a wine-stained tray trembling in her hands, and watched her entire carefully constructed life crack open like an egg dropped from a skyscraper. The slap had been loud, Vincent level loud, the kind that echoes off vaulted ceilings and gets remembered in police reports as excessive force if anyone ever bothers to file one, which they won't. But that wasn't the moment everything changed. The moment came 3 seconds later when Thea lifted her gaze from the polished granite floor where she'd kept it religiously for 3 years, 127 shifts, approximately 4,572 hours of deliberate invisibility, and looked Alaric Graves directly in his winter-gray eyes. And spoke. Not in English, not in apology. In something older, something that hadn't been heard in these dining rooms since her father's generation ran whiskey through speakeasies and paid off cops with gold coins stamped with serpents. The words that came out of her mouth were cipher code, the dead language of the 5 founding families of New York's underworld, and they corrected Alaric Graves's grammar with the precision of a jeweler cutting glass. Vinum quod petibus erat Margot 1998 sed hoc est Margot millesimus octogesimus. Every gun in the room swiveled toward her. Thea's hands stopped shaking. For the first time in 13 years she felt the weight of her father's training settle over her shoulders like armor she'd forgotten how to wear. Her spine straightened. The mousy waitress posture evaporated. Something in her face shifted, not dramatically, not obviously, but enough that the 3 men closest to her took a half-step back. Alaric Graves let the wineglass slip from his fingers. It hit the floor with a crystalline crack that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. Burgundy liquid spread across white marble in patterns that reminded Thea of blood of Christmas 13 years ago, of her father's hand going limp in hers. The old man's scar, a vicious thing that ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, souvenir of some decades-old war, went white against his tanned skin. His voice came out barely above a whisper, but in that room it carried like thunder. "Who taught you that language?" Thea's throat closed. Wrong answer gets you killed. Right answer gets you killed differently. No answer at all that might buy seconds. She opened her mouth, tasting copper from where his ring had split her lip, and Dad. The word slipped out. Not in cipher code. Plain English. Flat and defiant and so goddamn stupid that if she survived the next 5 minutes it would only be because the universe had a sick sense of humor. Alaric's hand moved toward his jacket. Thea's training kicked in. She cataloged the motion, calculated the draw speed, identified 3 exits and which one gave her the best odds. Stop. The command came from Alaric's left. Caspian Graves rose from his chair with the fluid grace of a predator who'd never had to hurry because everything he hunted eventually came to him. He was 32, maybe 33. The kind of handsome that magazines put on covers but real women crossed the street to avoid. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood cruelty. Eyes the color of smoke over ice. A suit that cost more than Thea made in 6 months. And when he looked at her, really looked, Thea felt something she hadn't felt since the night her father died. Fear. Not the jumpiness of a waitress afraid of being fired. The bone-deep lizard-brain certainty that she was looking at apex predator and she was very much prey. Caspian moved around the table. His bodyguard shifted to give him room. 200 guests sat frozen in their chairs, forks halfway to mouths, because when a Graves moved, everyone else became statues. He stopped 3 feet from Thea, close enough that she could smell his cologne cedar and smoke and something darker, something that reminded her of the gun oil her father used to clean his weapons. "Show me your hands." Not a request. Thea raised them, palms up. The tray clattered to the floor. Caspian's gaze dropped to her knuckles. To the calluses there, the specific pattern of scar tissue that only comes from one thing. "You train." Not a question, an accusation. "Combat training." "What style?" Thea's heart hammered against her ribs. "Lie and he'll know. Truth gets you killed. Krav Maga, boxing, Systema. Who taught you? My father. Name. The word hung in the air like a blade. Thea felt the weight of 200 pairs of eyes, felt Preston Cole, her manager, radiating panic from his position by the kitchen doors, felt the past 13 years of running, hiding, becoming nobody, becoming nothing, all of it about to end because she couldn't keep her goddamn mouth shut. Alaric's voice cut through her paralysis. I asked you a question, girl. Your father's name. Now. Thea met his eyes. Gray like winter skies. Gray like gravestones. Silas, she said quietly. Silas Ashford. The name detonated like a grenade. Alaric actually stumbled backward. His hand found the edge of the table, gripped it hard enough that his knuckles went white. His face cycled through 3 expressions too fast to parse shock recognition, something that might have been guilt, but vanished before Thea could be sure. Caspian went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that comes before violence. Then he moved. His hand shot out, caught the collar of Thea's uniform, and dragged her forward. She didn't resist. Resisting would activate every gun in the room. Instead, she let herself be pulled close enough to feel his breath on her face, close enough to see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. Silas Ashford is dead. The words came out flat, final. 13 years. Everyone knows this. I know. Ashford had 2 children. Twins. Both disappeared the night he died. Presumed dead. One of us survived. Caspian's grip tightened, the collar cut into her throat. Thea's vision started to sparkle at the edges, but she kept her gaze locked on his, kept her breathing even, kept every muscle in her body from tensing, because that's what rabbits do before they bolt. And she was not a rabbit. Not anymore. Prove it, Caspian said. Thea reached up slowly, carefully, and pulled the chain from beneath her collar. The ring emerged into the light, and the room sucked in its collective breath. It was small, gold worn soft with age. The face bore an engraving that every person in that room would recognize: a serpent coiled around a crown, the symbol of the Ashford family, one of the 5 founding bloodlines of New York's underworld. The ring that should have been buried with Silas Ashford 13 years ago. Caspian released her collar. His hand moved to the ring instead, lifting it, turning it in the light. His thumb traced the engraving with something approaching reverence. This was buried, he said softly. I was there. I watched them close the casket. He gave it to me. Thea's voice cracked. She hated herself for it. The night they came, put it around my neck and told me to run. Alaric's voice came from behind Caspian, rough as gravel. What else did he tell you? Thea's eyes burned. She blinked hard, forced the tears back, forced herself to meet Alaric's gaze over his son's shoulder. He told me the Graves family would either save me or kill me. He didn't know which. She paused. Let the words settle. So which is it? For a long moment, nobody moved. The entire restaurant held its breath. Then Alaric smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark that's just realized the fish in front of it is actually another shark. That depends, he said, on whether you can prove you're really his daughter. He gestured to the chess table in the corner. The Crown and Anchor kept one in the back room for high rollers who like to gamble on more than cards. Ornate pieces, marble board betting, minimum 5 figures. One game, Alaric said. You win. I pay you $50,000 and we never speak again. You lose. His smile widened. You work for me. 10 years. No questions. No escape. Thea's pulse hammered. 50,000 would get her the information she needed. The private investigator tracking Kieran wanted that exact amount for the final lead, the one that would tell her where her twin brother had been for the last 13 years. But 10 years as Alaric Graves's property. She looked at the chess table, at Alaric, at Caspian, who watched her with those smoke and ice eyes. Deal, she said. They moved to the back room. The guests stayed frozen, nobody daring to leave, nobody daring to even whisper. Preston hovered near the door, looking like he might vomit. Thea ignored him. The chess pieces were already set. Alaric took white. Thea sat across from him and felt the weight of 100 memories. Her father's study, winter nights, the click of pieces on wood, his voice patient and precise. Chess isn't about the pieces, little serpent. It's about knowing what your opponent values more than winning. Alaric moved his king's pawn forward 2 spaces. Classic opening, no flourish. Thea responded with the Ashford gambit. It was an opening variation so obscure that most grandmasters didn't know it existed. Silas Ashford had invented it 30 years ago, taught it only to his children, used it exactly 3 times in tournament play before retiring from the circuit. Thea moved her knight to f6, her bishop to c5, her queen's pawn to d6, in a pattern that looked suicidal but set up a trap 7 moves deep. Alaric's hand froze over his bishop. His eyes snapped up to hers. For the first time since she'd spoken cipher code, she saw genuine emotion on his face, recognition, and something else, something that looked almost like grief. Silas only taught that opening to family, he whispered, to his children, to his daughter. Thea moved her rook. Your move. What followed was 10 minutes of the most brutal chess Thea had played in her life. Alaric was good, better than good. He'd been playing since before Thea was born, had beaten grandmasters, had a mind like a steel trap and the patience of stone. But Silas Ashford had been better, and he'd taught his daughter everything. Move 15. Thea sacrificed her queen. The room gasped. Caspian, standing against the wall with his arms crossed, straightened slightly. Alaric stared at the board. His hand hovered over the black queen, fingers trembling. Taking this loses the game, he said. I know. You're bluffing. Take it and find out. He took it. Move 23. Thea moved her knight to e3, her bishop to g4, her remaining rook to h1. Checkmate. Alaric stared at the board for a full 30 seconds. Then he started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who'd just seen a ghost walk through his front door and sit down for dinner. Silas used to do that, he said quietly. Sacrifice the queen to make me overcommit, then strangle me with the minor pieces. He looked up at Thea. He beat me 17 times with that exact pattern. I never learned. He said you were stubborn. He talked about me. The question came out raw, vulnerable. For just a second, Alaric wasn't the king of New York's underworld. He was an old man who'd lost a friend and never quite forgiven himself. Thea's throat tightened. He said you were the best ally he ever had, and the most dangerous enemy. Alaric's jaw worked. He stood, pulled a money clip from his jacket, counted out 50,000 in hundreds, set it on the table. Take it. Our business is concluded. Thea reached for the money. Her fingers brushed the bills. Caspian's hand came down on top of the stack. No. Alaric turned. Son, she humiliated you in front of 200 underbosses. Caspian's voice was flat, clinical. Every one of them just watched Silas Ashford's daughter beat you at chess. By morning, that story will be in every crew from Brooklyn to the Bronx. They'll say you're weak. They'll say the old man's losing his edge. He looked at Thea. They'll kill her to prove they're stronger than you. The words hit like a fist to the gut. Thea's hand closed around the money. That's not my problem. It will be when you're dead in an alley with your throat cut. Caspian pulled out his phone, typed something, set it on the table facing her. That's your apartment. 3rd floor walk-up, Alphabet City. Door faces the fire escape. No security camera, no doorman. Anyone with a lockpick could be inside in 30 seconds. Then Thea's blood went cold. How do you... I know everything about everyone in this city. He leaned forward. Including the fact that you've been sending money to a private investigator named Marcus Webb for the last 8 months. Money you can't afford. Chasing leads on someone named Kieran. The world tilted. Thea's voice came out barely above a whisper. Stay away from my brother. Your brother's been missing 13 years. Webb's been feeding you bullshit leads and taking your money because desperate people pay well. Caspian's eyes were chips of ice. But I have access to resources Webb doesn't. Police databases, federal records, surveillance networks across 6 states. He pulled out a photograph, set it on the table. Thea's hands shook as she picked it up. The man in the photo was her age. Dark hair, green eyes. A scar running through his left eyebrow, same scar Thea had, same stupid accident climbing the oak tree in their backyard when they were 9. Kieran. Alive. The photo was dated 3 days ago. Location stamp, Lower Manhattan. Thea couldn't breathe. 13 years. 13 years of not knowing, of imagining him dead in a ditch somewhere, of carrying the weight of being the only one who survived. Where is he? Working security for a man named Draven Hale. Caspian's voice went cold. The same man who killed your father. The room spun. Thea gripped the edge of the table. That's impossible. Kieran would never... Your brother doesn't remember you. Caspian pulled out another photo. This one showed Kieran in tactical gear standing next to a silver-haired man with dead eyes. Hale took him the night Silas died. Spent 13 years breaking him down and rebuilding him. Kieran Ashford is gone. The man in that photo thinks his name is Kieran Hale and that Draven raised him from nothing. Thea's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forced herself to focus. Why are you telling me this? Alaric's voice came from behind her. Because 3 days ago we received a message, in cipher code, promising to kill my son within 72 hours. He set a phone on the table, pulled up a text message. Caput serpentis cadet sub luna nova. Tres dies. The head of the serpent will fall under the new moon. 3 days. New moon is tomorrow night, Alaric said quietly. We don't know who sent it. We don't know how they learned cipher code, but whoever they are, they have resources, information, and the willingness to go to war with my family. He met Thea's eyes. You're the only person outside this room who can read that language, which means you're either part of the threat or you're the only weapon we have to stop it. Thea looked at the message, at Kieran's photo, at the $50,000 that suddenly seemed meaningless. What do you want from me? Caspian answered. Move into the estate. Work as my strategist. Use your father's training to help us identify the threat. His expression didn't change. In exchange, we'll find your brother. Bring him home. Help him remember who he really is. And if I say no, then you take the money, walk out that door, and we never speak again. Alaric's voice was gentle, almost kind. But by morning you'll be dead. And by tomorrow night, so will my son. The choice wasn't really a choice. Thea looked at Kieran's photo one more time, at the scar through his eyebrow, at eyes that used to light up when she'd challenge him to tree-climbing races. She thought about her father's last words. Find your brother. Bring the family home. I'll do it, she said, but I have conditions. Alaric smiled. Name them. First, you help me get Kieran back, not just find him. Get him back, whatever it takes. Agreed. Second, you tell me the truth about my father's death, all of it. No lies, no omissions. Alaric's smile faded. He looked at Caspian. Some silent communication passed between them. When the time is right, Alaric said carefully, now or I walk. You'll walk to your death. Then you'll have one less problem to solve. Silence stretched. Caspian's jaw tightened. Alaric's scar went white again. Finally, the old man nodded. Your father died because he trusted me, Alaric said quietly. Draven Hale came for him on Christmas Eve 13 years ago. Silas called me, asked for backup. I told him I'd send men. His voice cracked. I lied. I was in the middle of a territorial dispute with the Covenant families. Sending men to help Silas would have shown weakness, would have cost me leverage. He closed his eyes. So I let my best friend die alone because I was too proud to risk my position. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Thea's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed to hit him, to make him hurt the way she'd hurt for 13 years. But beneath the rage was something else. Recognition. Her father had taught her about power, about the weight of choices, about how sometimes the right decision and the moral decision aren't the same thing. Alaric had chosen power over friendship, and it had been eating him alive ever since. Third condition, Thea said, her voice steady despite the fury burning in her chest. When this is over, when Kieran's safe and the threat is gone, you owe my family a debt. One favor. No questions, no limits. Alaric's eyes widened slightly. A debt from Alaric Graves was worth more than money, more than protection. It was currency that could buy nations. Done, he said. Thea stood, left the 50,000 on the table, looked at Caspian. When do we start? Now. He gestured to the door. Car's waiting. We leave for the estate in 10 minutes. Thea walked toward the exit, stopped at the threshold, turned back. Preston stood against the wall, face pale, eyes wide. Preston! He jumped. Yes. You're fired. Then she walked out of the Crown and Anchor and into a life she'd spent 13 years running from. The night air hit her like a slap. Cold, sharp, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust and something else, anticipation maybe, or just the city holding its breath. Caspian's hand settled on her elbow. Not rough, not gentle, just there. A reminder that she'd made a deal, and deals with the Graves family didn't come with escape clauses. The Mercedes idling at the curb was the kind of car Thea had only ever seen in movies. Black, sleek, windows tinted so dark they looked like mirrors. The driver opened the door. Caspian gestured for her to get in. Thea hesitated. Once she got in that car, there was no going back. No more anonymity, no more hiding. She'd be Thea Ashford again, daughter of Silas, last of her line, walking target. She thought about Kieran, about the scar through his eyebrow and the dead look in his eyes. She got in the car. Caspian slid in beside her. The door closed with a sound like a vault ceiling. The privacy screen between them and the driver was already up. They pulled into traffic. Manhattan slid past the windows in streaks of light and shadow. For 3 blocks neither of them spoke. Then Caspian's voice cut through the silence. You're afraid. Not a question. An observation. Thea kept her eyes on the window. Yes. Good. Fear keeps you alive. He shifted, and suddenly his face was reflected in the glass beside hers. But it also makes you hesitate, and hesitation in my world gets you killed. Your world. Thea turned to face him. You mean the world my father built? The world you inherited when your family let him die? Caspian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something dangerous. Careful. Or what? You'll kick me out of the car, send me back to my apartment where someone's waiting to cut my throat. Thea leaned forward. You need me. You said it yourself. I'm the only weapon you have. Weapons can be replaced. Not ones that speak cipher code. Silence. Caspian's jaw worked. Then he smiled. It was the first genuine expression she'd seen on his face. Not warm, not friendly, but real. You have your father's fire, he said quietly. He used to talk back to Alaric the same way. It's part of why they were such good friends. And part of why... He stopped. Why what? Caspian looked out the window, watched the city scroll past. Why Alaric couldn't let himself save Silas when the time came. Because your father made him feel weak, made him question his decisions, made him human. His voice dropped. And in our world, human is the same as dead. Thea's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting spam, expecting nothing. The message made her blood freeze. Unknown number. 1 word in cipher code. Gemini. Twins. Beneath it a photo. Kieran, tied to a chair, blood running down his face. Behind him, a man Thea didn't recognize held a knife to her brother's throat. Text below the photo, sister owes $300,000. 48 hours. Or twin dies screaming. Thea's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Caspian plucked it from her fingers, looked at the screen. His expression went flat. Dead. Draven Hale, he said. He knows you're alive. How? Someone at the restaurant talked. Someone always talks. He pulled out his own phone, typed something. We're moving up the timeline. What timeline? Caspian met her eyes. the one where we go to war." The Graves estate materialized out of darkness like something from another century. Wrought iron gates, stone walls that had witnessed Prohibition rum runners and Depression-era breadlines. Oak trees older than the country itself standing sentinel along a driveway that curved for half a mile through manicured grounds that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a lifetime. Thea pressed her forehead against the car window and tried not to think about the photo of Kieran. About the knife. About 48 hours counting down like a bomb timer. The Mercedes glided to a stop in front of stairs that belonged on a plantation not in upstate New York. Floodlights turned the limestone facade into something carved from bone. Caspian's door opened first. He stepped out, straightened his jacket, and became someone different, harder. The man who'd shown a flicker of humanity in the car vanished behind a mask of absolute authority. Thea climbed out on shaking legs. The night air tasted like frost and old money. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman stood in the threshold, late 50s, steel-gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it could double as a weapon gaze, dissecting Thea like a specimen under glass. "Master Caspian?" Her voice carried the faint lilt of somewhere else, somewhere the Graves family had probably colonized 3 generations ago. "Your father called ahead. The East Wing is prepared." "Thank you, Mrs. Ashworth." Caspian gestured to Thea. "This is Thea Ashford. She'll be staying indefinitely. Full access to the grounds, the library, the strategy room. No restrictions." Mrs. Ashworth's attention landed on Thea, and the temperature dropped another 10 degrees. "Ashford." The name came out clipped, precise. "As in Silas. His daughter." Something flickered across the woman's face. Not quite surprise, something closer to vindication. "I see. Well then." She stepped aside. "Welcome home, Miss Ashford. It's been far too long." The words carried weight Thea didn't understand. She filed it away, added it to the growing list of mysteries that seemed to breed like rabbits every time someone opened their mouth. The foyer swallowed her whole. Marble floors, crystal chandelier the size of a compact car, staircase that split in 2 directions like a choice in a fairy tale. Left leads to the dragon, right leads to the witch. Pick your poison. Caspian headed right. Thea followed. They climbed in silence. Her sneakers squeaked on marble. His dress shoes whispered. The contrast felt like commentary. 3rd floor. Hallway lined with portraits of dead people wearing expressions that suggested they'd died angry and planned to stay that way. Caspian stopped at a door, pushed it open. The room beyond was bigger than Thea's entire apartment. King bed, sitting area, fireplace, windows overlooking grounds that stretched into darkness. "Clothes in the closet, your size. Bathroom through there," Caspian pointed. "Tomorrow morning 6 a.m. meet me in the strategy room, 2nd floor west wing. Don't be late." He turned to leave. Thea's voice stopped him. "Why are you doing this?" Caspian paused in the doorway, didn't turn around. "Doing what?" "Helping me. You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. 48 hours ago I was nobody. Now you're handing me access to your entire operation." She crossed her arms. "What's the angle?" For a long moment he didn't move. Then his shoulders shifted, not quite a shrug, not quite a flinch. "My mother used to say that the universe keeps score, that debts come due whether we acknowledge them or not." His voice went soft, dangerous. "My father owes yours. That makes it my debt too. And I always pay what I owe." He left. The door clicked shut. Thea stood alone in a room worth more than everything she'd owned in her entire life and felt the weight of 13 years crash down on her shoulders. She made it to the bathroom before the tears came. 6 a.m. arrived with the subtlety of a hammer to the skull. Thea woke to knocking sharp insistent, the kind that said, "I don't care if you're ready, time moves forward." She'd slept in her clothes, hadn't meant to sleep at all. But somewhere around 3 a.m. exhaustion had dragged her under, and now sunlight sliced through gaps in the curtains like accusations. The knocking continued. Thea rolled out of bed, stumbled to the door, yanked it open. Mrs. Ashworth stood there with a coffee tray and an expression that suggested she'd been awake since the Roosevelt administration. "Master Caspian is waiting." Thea took the coffee black strong enough to strip paint and tried to remember how to form words. "What time is it?" 5:57. You have 3 minutes. The woman turned and walked away with the posture of someone who'd served tyrants and learned to enjoy it. Thea drank the coffee in 4 burning gulps, splashed water on her face, and headed for the West Wing. The strategy room looked like a war bunker had married a library and produced offspring that took itself way too seriously. Maps covered one wall. New York broken into territories marked with different colors. Red pins, blue pins, black pins that probably meant bodies. The opposite wall was floor-to-ceiling screens showing security feeds from what had to be 50 different locations. Restaurants, warehouses, docks, the digital nervous system of an empire. Caspian stood at the head of a conference table that could seat 20. He'd changed clothes, dark slacks, white shirt rolled to the elbows, no tie. Less Fortune 500, more functional violence. "You're late." Thea checked her phone. 6:02. 2 minutes. In my world, 2 minutes is the difference between breathing and bleeding out in an alley. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." She sat. Caspian slid a folder across the table. Thea opened it. Photos. Surveillance shots. Men in expensive suits having conversations in expensive restaurants. Women in cocktail dresses passing envelopes in parking garages. All of it stamped with dates, times, locations. "What am I looking at?" "The conspiracy to kill me." Caspian's voice was clinical, detached. 23 separate incidents over the last 6 months. Threats, near misses. 2 actual attempts that got close enough to leave scars. He pushed up his left sleeve. A burn mark ran from wrist to elbow, recent still pink. "Car bomb. 3 weeks ago. Driver took the blast. I walked away with second-degree burns and a new appreciation for bulletproof glass." Thea's chest tightened. She forced herself to keep looking at the photos. "You think these are all connected?" "I know they are. Same pattern, same precision, someone with resources, information, and patience." He pulled out another photo. "This was taken outside the restaurant last night, 10 minutes before you corrected my father's wine knowledge and changed both our lives." The photo showed 2 men, mid-40s, unremarkable suits, faces that belonged to accountants or insurance salesmen or any of the 1,000 professions that required looking forgettable. But their eyes belonged to killers. "Who are they?" "We don't know. Facial recognition came back empty. No criminal records, no digital footprint. They're ghosts." Caspian zoomed in on something one of them was holding. "But look at this." A phone. Screen visible. Text message in a language that made Thea's blood run cold. Cipher code. "Caput serpentis hodie vigilat. Cras moriatur. The serpent's head watches today. Tomorrow it dies." Thea's pulse hammered in her throat. "You said you received the first threat 3 days ago." "Correct. But this photo is from last night, which means they were watching, waiting, seeing if I'd take the bait." Caspian's jaw tightened. "I didn't. But then you showed up and demonstrated that someone outside the Graves family can read cipher code. And suddenly the timeline accelerated." Thea looked at the photo of Kieran on her phone. The knife. The 48-hour deadline. "They're using my brother as leverage, forcing me to choose between helping you and saving him." "Yes. So what's your play? Let Kieran die so I focus on protecting you." Caspian's expression didn't change, but something in his stare went blade sharp, cutting through every defense she'd tried to maintain. "My play is to find out who's behind this, kill them, and rescue your brother before the 48 hours expire." He leaned forward. "But to do that, I need you to do something you're very, very bad at." "What's that?" "Trust me." The word hung between them like a dare. Thea thought about her father, about Alaric's confession, about 13 years of learning that trust was just another word for vulnerability, and vulnerability got you killed. "I don't trust anyone." "Good. That'll keep you alive." Caspian stood, walked to the map wall. But you're going to have to pretend. Because in 3 hours you and I are attending a meeting with the heads of New York's 5 remaining families. And if they sense weakness, if they smell fear, if they catch even a whiff of the fact that you're anything other than my completely loyal strategist. He drew a finger across his throat. Thea's stomach dropped. I thought there were only 4 families left. You and whoever else survived the purge. There were, until last night. Caspian tapped a red pin on the Bronx. The Covenant, the Marsh Syndicate, the Bishop crew, and now apparently the Ashfords are back from the dead. The words hit like a fist to the sternum. I'm one person. I'm not a family. I'm not a syndicate. I'm the daughter of Silas Ashford, last living heir to a bloodline that used to control 40% of the eastern seaboard's black market. Caspian turned to face her. Whether you like it or not, the moment you spoke cipher code in that restaurant, you resurrected your family's claim, and every crew in this city is going to want a piece of what you represent. Thea stood. The room felt too small, too hot. I don't want to represent anything. I want my brother back. I want... What you want doesn't matter. Caspian's voice cut like wire. What matters is what you are. And what you are, Thea Ashford, is a threat to everyone in this room except me. Why except you? Because I'm the only one who benefits from keeping you alive. The honesty was almost refreshing. Almost. Thea walked to the window, looked out at grounds that probably required a groundskeeping staff of 20. Dawn was breaking over trees that had watched empires rise and fall. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Dark circles under her eyes, hair still tangled from sleep, clothes rumpled. She looked like what she was, a waitress playing dress-up in a world that ate people like her for breakfast. I can't do this. The words slipped out before she could stop them. I'm not my father. I'm not... You beat Alaric Graves at chess. Caspian's voice came from directly behind her, close enough to feel his breath on her neck. You corrected his wine order in a dead language. You survived 13 years alone with no family, no resources, no backup. His hand settled on her shoulder, not rough, not gentle, just there. Don't compare yourself to ghosts. Stand on what you've already proven. He turned her to face him. Starting now. The meeting was in Manhattan. Neutral ground. A penthouse in Tribeca that belonged to nobody, and therefore belonged to everybody who mattered. Thea rode in the back of the Mercedes wearing clothes that cost more than her monthly rent used to. Black suit, white silk blouse, heels that could double as weapons, hair pulled back in a bun that echoed her father's severity. She looked like power, felt like a fraud. Caspian sat beside her, scrolling through his phone with the bored expression of someone heading to a dentist appointment, not a meeting that could end in a bloodbath. Rules. His voice was flat, bored. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact with anyone except me or my father. Don't touch anything. Don't drink anything. Don't accept anything. Anything else? Yes. If shooting starts, get behind me and stay there. These people respect strength, not martyrs. The car pulled up to a building that looked like it had been designed by someone who confused elegant with soulless. All glass and steel and the kind of aggressive modernity that screamed new money, trying to pretend it was old. They took a private elevator to the 42nd floor. The doors opened onto a space that was somehow both massive and claustrophobic. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Furniture that probably cost more than most people's houses. And in the center of it all, a conference table surrounded by 4 people who radiated the kind of danger that comes from never having to raise your voice. Alaric was already seated. He nodded to Caspian, didn't acknowledge Thea. To his left, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from diamonds and dipped in poison. Late 40s. Platinum hair. Predator's assessment in every glance. The Covenant's current head, Victoria Cross. Thea recognized her from her father's old files. Across from Victoria, a man who made Alaric look friendly. Bald, scarred, built like a freight train that had decided to go to law school and failed the ethics exam. Marcus Bishop. The Bishop crew had controlled the docks since the 1960s and had a reputation for creative violence. At the far end, someone Thea didn't recognize, young, maybe 30, handsome in the way that serial killers are handsome right before they disappoint their mothers. Sandy hair, easy smile, expensive watch. Dylan Marsh. Had to be. The Marsh Syndicate had lost its patriarch 2 years ago. Rumor was the son was worse. All 4 of them looked at Thea like she was a bug that had wandered into a board meeting. Victoria spoke first. "So, the ghost has a name after all." Her voice carried the kind of cultured accent that came from expensive boarding schools and a childhood spent learning which fork to use at state dinners. Thea kept her expression neutral, remembered Caspian's rules, said nothing. Victoria's smile sharpened. "Silas Ashford's daughter. I remember when you were born. Your father threw quite the party. Champagne, cigars, 2 pounds of caviar that cost more than most people's cars." She leaned back. He was so proud. Said he'd finally secured his legacy. The words carried barbs. Thea felt them sink in but refused to react. Marcus Bishop's gravelly voice rumbled across the table. "Legacy didn't last long. Silas got himself killed. Kids disappeared. Ashford Empire crumbled in 6 months." His eyes, flat, dead shark eyes, fixed on Thea. "Now one of those kids shows up after 13 years just as someone starts trying to kill Caspian Graves. Interesting timing." Caspian's hand found Thea's knee under the table, squeezed once. A warning. "Stay calm. Miss Ashford is here under my protection." Caspian's voice was winter over steel. "Any threat to her is a threat to the Graves family. I trust that's clear." Dylan Marsh laughed. It was a pleasant sound, friendly, the kind of laugh that made you want to join in right before the knife went between your ribs. Protection. How quaint. He stood, walked around the table, stopped behind Thea's chair. "Tell me, Miss Ashford, what exactly do you bring to this table besides a famous last name and a talent for showing up at convenient moments?" Thea's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She could feel Dylan behind her, could smell his cologne, something expensive and cloying. Caspian's hand tightened on her knee. "Don't engage." But Thea had spent 13 years being invisible. Being nothing. Being the girl who kept her head down and her mouth shut and let the world happen to her. And suddenly, sitting in that room surrounded by people who'd probably celebrated when her father died, something inside her cracked. She stood, turned to face Dylan. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Pretty in the way that dolls are pretty, all symmetry and no soul. "What do I bring?" Thea's voice came out steady, lethal calm. "I bring the ability to read cipher code, which means I can intercept communications you think are secure. I bring my father's network of contacts, the ones who survived anyway, the ones who remember that the Ashford family kept its word." She stepped closer. "And I bring something none of you have." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose." The room went quiet. Victoria's eyebrows lifted. Marcus actually smiled, a terrible expression on that face. Alaric looked like he was trying not to laugh. Dylan's pleasant expression never wavered. "Brave words from someone whose brother is currently bleeding in a basement somewhere." His voice dropped. "Tick-tock, Miss Ashford. 47 hours left. How's your rescue plan coming along?" Thea's blood turned to slush. How did he know about Kieran Caspian stood? The movement was smooth, controlled, but Thea saw his hand drift toward the gun she knew he kept at the small of his back. "Careful, Dylan. Careful." Dylan's smile widened. "Why, we're all friends here. Just making conversation." He pulled out his phone, showed the screen to Thea. The same photo. Kieran tied to a chair, knife at his throat. But this version included a time stamp, 12 minutes ago. "Fresh cut on his left cheek. See it? That's new since your last update." Dylan's voice was pleasant, conversational. "Draven Hale is very good at what he does, and what he does is extract information from people who don't want to give it." Thea's knuckles went white. "What do you want?" "Want?" Dylan laughed again. "I don't want anything. I'm just here to watch the show, See how long it takes for Silas Ashford's daughter to crack. See if you're really as strong as Daddy Dearest, or if you're just another spoiled princess playing at being dangerous." Thea moved before she could think. Her hand snapped out, caught Dylan's wrist, twisted with the precision her father had drilled into her during 10,000 repetitions. Bone scraped against bone. Dylan's phone clattered to the floor. She had him on his knees in less than 2 seconds. The room erupted. Guns appeared. Victoria's bodyguard, Marcus's lieutenant. 2 men. Thea hadn't even noticed, standing in the shadows. Caspian was suddenly between Thea and the guns, his own weapon-drawn expression carved from stone. "Stand. Down." Authority radiated from him like heat. For a frozen moment nobody moved. Then Alaric's voice cut through the tension. "Enough!" He stood slowly. "Miss Ashford, release him." Thea held Dylan's wrist for one more heartbeat. Let him feel the pressure. Let him understand that she wasn't playing. Then she let go. Dylan stood rubbing his wrist, smile never fading. "Impressive. Krav Maga no-weight sistema. Daddy's favorite." He picked up his phone. "You've got fire. I like that. Makes what's coming more interesting." Victoria's sharp voice interrupted. "What's coming, Mr. Marsh?" Dylan looked around the room. His expression shifted, still smiling, but now there was something else underneath. Something hungry. War. Someone's targeting the Graves family, which means the power structure is about to shift. Smart players are already picking sides. He turned to Thea. "This isn't about Kieran, or you, or even Caspian. This is about what comes after the old families fall. And trust me, Miss Ashford, they will fall." The prophecy hung in the air like smoke. Marcus Bishop's gravelly voice. "And which side are you picking?" "Whichever one wins." Alaric moved to the center of the room. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 decades running New York's underworld. "This meeting is over. We reconvene in 72 hours. By then we'll know who's behind the threats and deal with them accordingly." His gaze swept the room. "Until then, the old rules apply. No territorial conflicts, no unauthorized hits. Anyone who breaks protocol answers to the council. Translation: behave or get buried." Victoria stood. "Agreed." Marcus nodded. Dylan just smiled, but as he passed Thea on his way out, he leaned close enough that only she could hear. "I've been waiting 13 years for the Ashford twins to reunite. Don't disappoint me." Then he was gone. Finally, it was just Thea, Caspian, and Alaric. The old man walked to the window, looked out at Manhattan stretching to the horizon. "That was stupid." His voice was quiet but cut like a scalpel. Thea's jaw tightened. "He deserved has nothing to do with it. You showed everyone in that room that you have a weakness, that your brother can be used against you." Alaric turned. "Now they'll all be calculating how to exploit that. Dylan was testing you. You failed." The words stung because they were true. Caspian holstered his gun. "She also showed them she's not afraid, that she can fight, that the Ashford name still means something. And now they'll either want to recruit her or kill her, possibly both." "Then we'd better make sure they choose recruit." Alaric studied his son for a long moment. Something passed between them, some wordless communication that comes from decades of knowing exactly how the other person thinks. Finally, Alaric nodded. "We have 46 hours before Kieran Ashford dies. We need leverage, information, proof that someone in that room is connected to Draven Hale and the assassination attempts." He looked at Thea. "Your father used to keep files, blackmail material on every major player in the city. Insurance, he called it. You wouldn't happen to know where those files are." Thea's mind raced. Her father's files. She'd thought they were destroyed in the attack, thought everything had burned. But there was one place, one location her father had shown her when she was 10 years old, a safety deposit box in a bank in Queens. He'd made her memorize the access codes, made her promise to only use them if everything else failed. "I might." Her voice came out careful, measured. "But I'd need to get to Queens, and I'd need assurance that whatever's in those files doesn't get used against my family." Alaric's laugh was bitter. "Your family is you and a brother who doesn't remember your name." What's left to protect? The future. Thea met his eyes. When I get Kieran back, when we rebuild, I don't want those files hanging over our heads like a sword. Then make sure you're valuable enough that we don't need to use them. It wasn't a promise. It was a challenge. Caspian's phone buzzed. He checked it and his expression went dark. We need to move, now. What happened? He showed her the screen. Another message. Cipher code. Gemini sanguis in duabus horis fluit. Veni sola aut ambo moriuntur. Twin blood flows in 2 hours. Come alone or both die. Below it an address in the Bronx. Thea's vision swam. 2 hours, not 48. They'd moved up the timeline. It's a trap. Alaric's voice was flat. Obvious, crude, designed to make you panic and do something stupid. I don't care. Thea grabbed her phone. That's my brother. I'm going. Caspian caught her wrist. You go alone, you die. Kieran dies. We lose our only lead. Then come with me. That's what they want. Separate us. Kill us both. Blame it on Draven Hale or some other boogeyman while the real threat moves in the shadows. Thea jerked free. So what's your plan? Let Kieran bleed out while we play chess with people who want us dead. Caspian's jaw tightened. For a moment she saw something crack in that icy exterior, frustration maybe, or the beginning of understanding that not everything could be solved with strategy. Then Alaric's voice cut through. I'll handle the Bronx situation. You two get to Queens. Get those files. Find me something I can use to turn one of the families against the others. You can't go alone, Caspian started. I'm taking 20 men, full tactical gear. If it's a trap, we'll be ready. Alaric's expression softened slightly. And if Kieran's really there, if there's any chance of extraction, I'll bring him home. Thea looked at the old man who'd let her father die, who'd spent 13 years carrying that guilt, who was now volunteering to walk into a trap for a boy he'd never met. Why would you do that? Alaric's smile was sad. Because Silas would have done it for my son. He headed for the elevator. You have 2 hours. Move fast. Trust no one. And for God's sake, don't let anyone follow you to those files. The doors closed on him. Thea and Caspian stood alone in the penthouse. The silence stretched, heavy, weighted with everything unsaid. Finally, Caspian spoke. Queens it is. They were halfway to the elevator when Thea's phone buzzed again. Another message. Not cipher code this time. Plain English. Unknown number. Your brother remembers nothing. But Dr. Finch kept records. Everything Hale did to break him. Every session. Every trauma. Check safety deposit box 2247. Same bank, different key. Below it, a photo of a key. Old brass. Worn smooth. And a final line. Someone in your family saw this coming. They left you breadcrumbs. Follow them before it's too late. Thea showed the message to Caspian. His expression went carefully neutral. Dr. Finch is dead. We executed him this morning for treason. Then who sent this? Someone who wants us to find those records. Question is whether they're trying to help us or lead us into another trap. Thea looked at the photo of the key, at the message about breadcrumbs. Her father used to say that the difference between paranoia and preparation was whether you survived. Right now, she'd settle for either. We're going to Queens, and we're finding out what my father left behind, even if it kills us. Caspian's smile was sharp. Especially if it kills us. The bank in Queens looked like it had been designed by someone who thought depression was an architectural style. Gray concrete, small windows, the kind of building that made you want to confess crimes you hadn't committed just to feel something. Thea climbed out of the Mercedes and felt the weight of the past settle over her shoulders like armor she'd forgotten how to wear. 13 years since she'd been here. She'd been 10 years old, holding her father's hand, listening to him explain why secrets mattered more than truth. Someday, little serpent, the world will try to erase you. These files are how you erase back. Caspian fell into step beside her. He'd changed clothes somewhere between Tribeca and Queens, traded the expensive suit for tactical pants, dark jacket, the kind of outfit that said, I'm ready for violence and honestly looking forward to it. Two of his men flanked them, silent, professional, the kind of security that made pedestrians cross the street without knowing why. Inside the bank smelled like old paper and broken dreams. Fluorescent lights hummed. A security guard looked up from his phone, clocked Caspian's crew, and suddenly became very interested in the floor tiles. The vault manager was a woman in her 60s who'd probably seen 3 generations of criminals use this bank for exactly what Thea was about to use it for. She checked Thea's ID with the enthusiasm of someone filing taxes, verified the access codes without comment, and led them down stairs that descended into the earth like they were entering a tomb. The safety deposit room was all steel and silence. Boxes lined the walls in neat rows. Anonymous, identical, secrets stacked on secrets. The manager stopped at box 1847, used her key, waited. Thea pulled out the chain from under her shirt, the one that held her father's ring. But beneath the ring, hidden for 13 years, was a smaller key. Brass, worn smooth from her father's fingers. She fitted it into the lock, turned. The mechanism clicked. The manager pulled out the box, set it on the table, and left without a word. Thea stared at the metal container. Her breath came shallow. Caspian's voice came quiet from behind her. You don't have to open it. Yes, I do. Whatever's in there, it doesn't change who you've become. Thea's throat tightened. She lifted the lid. The box was packed tight. Files, USB drives, and on top a letter in her father's handwriting. She picked it up with trembling fingers. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges, dated the day before he died. My little serpent. If you're reading this, I'm dead and you survived. I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't protect you. Sorry I couldn't save Kieran. Sorry for everything that's about to happen. You'll want revenge. You'll want blood. You'll want to burn down everyone who failed us. Don't. Revenge is a fire that consumes the person who lights it. I know. I've spent 20 years burning and all it's done is turn me to ash. Instead, rebuild. Find your brother. Bring him home. Restore the Ashford name not through violence but through becoming the kind of person who makes violence unnecessary. The files in this box will tempt you. They contain enough blackmail to destroy half of New York's power structure, enough secrets to start wars. Use them wisely, or better yet, don't use them at all. Be better than me, Thea. Be better than all of us. Your father, Silas. The words blurred. Thea read them twice, 3 times, each pass cutting deeper. Be better than me. She set the letter aside and something inside her chest cracked open. A memory surfaced sharp, vivid, unbidden. Christmas morning. She was 7. Kieran had gotten the bigger present and she'd thrown a fit. Her father had taken her aside, knelt down to her eye level. You know what makes someone strong, little serpent? Not the size of their weapons. Not the fear they inspire. It's what they choose to do when they have all the power and nobody's watching. He'd given her his signet ring to hold. The serpent coiled around the crown. Someday this will be yours. Not because you're my daughter. Because you'll have earned it by being better than I ever was. She'd given the ring back confused. He'd smiled, sad, knowing. Keep it safe for me. When I'm gone, it'll remind you that power without mercy is just another word for monster. Thea pressed her palm against her eyes. 13 years she'd carried that ring. 13 years she'd thought it meant legacy, birthright blood. But he'd been trying to teach her something else entirely. A hand settled on her shoulder. Caspian. He didn't speak. Didn't try to fix it. Just stood there while the grief moved through her like a wave, sharp and cleansing. When she could breathe again, she looked up. He met her eyes. Something passed between them. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. 2 people who'd both lost someone and learned to carry the weight. My mother died when I was 19. His voice was quiet, raw in a way she'd never heard from him. Cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. She made me promise I'd take care of my father. Keep him from becoming... He stopped. From becoming what he became anyway. Thea's throat ached. Did you keep the promise? I tried, but you can't save people from themselves. His hand squeezed her shoulder once, then fell away. Your father knew that. That's why he's asking you to save yourself instead. The moment stretched. Fragile. Human. Then Thea turned back to the box, started pulling files. Graves, Hale, Bishop, Cross, Marsh, every major player, every secret. Her father had documented it all. She opened the Hale file first. Medical records from a private psychiatric facility in upstate New York. Patient Kieran Ashford, admitted 3 days after Silas's death, diagnosed with acute trauma-dissociative amnesia, suspected PTSD. Treatment authorized by legal guardian Draven Hale. Thea's vision tunneled. Beneath the medical records court documents. Forged death certificate for Thea Ashford. Testimony from 3 witnesses, all Hale's men, stating that Silas had named Hale as guardian. All lies, all legal. He was 3 weeks away. Caspian pulled out another document. Highlighted notes in Silas's handwriting. Your father was building a case. He had the judge's bribes documented. Witness statements from people Hale had paid off. He was going to bring it all down. But he died first. Yes. Thea closed the file, opened box 2247 with the key from the mysterious message, inside a single USB drive, and typed instructions. Dr. Finch's recordings, every session with Kieran. Use them to help him remember. But know this, someone else has the originals. Someone who wants you to find them before the war starts. You have 24 hours. Thea pocketed the drive, started gathering the most critical files. Her phone buzzed. Caspian's did too. They looked at each other. Both checked. Alaric's message was 5 words, Kieran not here. Just message. Attached photo, concrete wall. Message painted in blood. Cipher code. Gemini coronabitur incinera patris. The twins will be crowned in their father's ashes. Below it coordinates. And a timestamp, 6:00 p.m. Today. 3 hours from now. Thea's pulse hammered. The Obsidian Room. Hale's casino in Lower Manhattan. His fortress. Caspian's expression went cold. Going in there is suicide. Then I'm going to die. Thea grabbed the files, shoved them in her bag. Because that's where Kieran is and I'm done waiting. Caspian caught her wrist. Listen to me. This is what they want. You walking into a trap because you're desperate. They're playing on your emotions. I know. Thea met his stare. I know it's a trap. I know I'm being manipulated. I know every strategic reason why this is a terrible idea. Her voice cracked. But he's my brother, my twin. And for 13 years I thought he was dead. Now I know he's alive and suffering, and I can't leave him there. Silence filled the vault. Caspian studied her. Then he nodded. Okay. Okay. We're going in, but we're doing it smart. We're using your father's files to turn the families against each other, create chaos, force them to divide their attention. He pulled out his phone, started typing. And we're going to make sure that if this goes wrong, if we don't walk out of there, we take enough of them with us that the survivors remember the Ashford name for the next century. Thea wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he didn't have to come, but the words wouldn't come, because the truth was, she needed him, needed his resources, his contacts, his cold, strategic mind, needed someone who looked at her like she was worth saving. They left the bank with ammunition that could destroy empires. The drive back to Manhattan took 40 minutes. Thea spent the time scanning documents, building a mental map of who owed what to whom. By the time they reached the Graves estate, she had a plan. Alaric was waiting in the strategy room. He looked older. The Bronx raid had cost him, she could see it in the set of his shoulders. Kieran wasn't there. He said it like a confession. But we found evidence. Medical equipment, restraints, blood. Your brother's been there recently. Thea set the files on the table. I know where he is. The Obsidian Room. 6 p.m. Alaric looked at Caspian. That's Hale's fortress. Then we cheat. Thea pulled out files. Marcus Bishop has been running guns through Hale's docks without authorization. Victoria Cross has been embezzling $3 million from the Covenant. Dylan Marsh isn't even legitimate. He's the product of an affair, killed his half-brother to secure the inheritance. She spread the files like cards. We leak this. All of it. Every family gets proof of every other family's crimes. Create chaos. Make them turn on each other. And while they're busy destroying one another, we go get my brother. Alaric stared at the files, then at her. Your father would have done the same. His voice was quiet, respectful. This destroys the balance we've maintained for 20 years. Good. The balance got my father killed. It also kept this city from becoming a war zone. It's already a war zone. You just pretended it wasn't because the bodies weren't yours. The accusation hung in the air. Alaric's expression hardened, then softened. You're right, and I'm done pretending. He looked at Caspian. Send the files, all of them. Caspian hesitated. Father, do it. It's time for a new world. Alaric extended his hand to Thea. One where the Ashford family stands beside the Graves family. She took it. Partners, until one of us dies. Let's make sure it's not today. The files went out at 4:30 p.m. By 4:45, the city was eating itself alive. At 5:50, they loaded into 4 vehicles and headed for war. The casino occupied the basement of a building in the financial district. Ironic criminals gambling in the shadow of legitimate thieves. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Boarded windows, rusted fire escape, the kind of place you walked past without noticing. But Thea knew better. Knew about the reinforced steel beneath the boards, the surveillance cameras hidden in streetlights, the kill zones covering every approach. She clutched the bag containing her father's files. Ammunition that had already set the city on fire. By now Marcus Bishop's crew would be hitting Victoria's warehouses. Dylan Marsh would be moving on the Bishop territories. The old families tearing each other apart while she walked into the belly of the beast. Caspian's tactical team moved like ghosts. They'd done this before. Knew how to clear rooms, neutralize threats, extract targets, but they'd never done it against Draven Hale, the man who'd killed Silas Ashford and walked away clean. The man who'd stolen Kieran and spent 13 years turning him into a weapon. The man who was about to discover that Thea Ashford was her father's daughter in every way that mattered. They breached at 6:00 p.m. exactly. The first floor was empty. Too empty. No guards, no resistance, just a staircase leading down into darkness like a throat waiting to swallow them whole. At the bottom, a door. Steel. No handle. Just a keypad glowing red in the shadows. Caspian pulled out a device, started working on the lock. His fingers moved with surgical precision. 30 seconds. 45. Thea's phone buzzed. Message from unknown number. Come alone or watch him die on camera. Attached live video feed. Kieran in a chair, conscious now, bleeding from a fresh cut on his temple. Behind him, Draven Hale with a gun pressed to the base of his skull. Hale's voice came through tinny speakers, cultured and pleasant like a professor discussing literature. Tick-tock, sister. Door opens in 10 seconds. You walk through alone, or I demonstrate what happens to disobedient children. Alaric grabbed Thea's arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Don't. It's suicide. It's my brother. It's a trap designed to kill you both. Thea looked at the screen, at Kieran's face, at the scar through his eyebrow that matched hers, same stupid accident, same oak tree, same summer afternoon when they'd been 9 and immortal and convinced they could fly if they just climbed high enough. And she saw something. Just a flicker. Just a moment where his eyes focused on the camera, where something behind the blank expression shifted like ice cracking over deep water. Recognition. Buried deep. Locked away behind 13 years of conditioning and lies and carefully constructed amnesia. But there. He remembered. Maybe not her name. Maybe not their past. But something. Some fragment of the bond that had existed before Hale tore them apart. I'm going in. Thea pulled free of Alaric's grip. You give me 5 minutes, then you blow the door and come in shooting. 5 minutes, you could be dead. Then you'll have 4 minutes and 30 seconds to avenge me. The door clicked, swung open on hinges that moved silent as confession. darkness beyond. And somewhere in that darkness, her brother waiting to either remember or kill her. Thea stepped through. The door slammed shut behind her with the finality of a casket lid. For 3 heartbeats, she stood in absolute black. No sound, no light, just the thundering of her pulse in her ears and the weight of her father's ring against her chest. Then lights flickered on, harsh, industrial, the kind that turned everything the color of old bruises and made shadows look like blood. She was in a casino, or what used to be one. Poker tables overturned like corpses. Slot machines gutted their electronic guts spilling across warped floorboards. The air tasted like mold and copper, and something else, fear maybe, or just the accumulated desperation of 1,000 bad bets. In the center of the room, Kieran, not tied to a chair anymore, standing, free, holding a gun with the easy competence of someone who'd been born holding weapons. Behind him, Draven Hale, 55. Silver hair swept back from a face that belonged on currency or monuments to dead tyrants, eyes the color of winter-killing frost. Smiling. Thea Ashford. Finally. His voice was cultured, pleasant. The voice of a man who'd never raised it because people listened or they stopped breathing. 13 years I've been waiting for this reunion. Thea's eyes stayed on Kieran, on the gun in his hand, on the way he held it professional grip finger alongside the trigger guard stance that spoke of endless drills and muscle memory deeper than thought. Kieran, her voice cracked. She hated herself for it, hated the weakness. It's me. It's Thea, your sister. I don't have a sister. His voice was flat, empty. The voice of someone who'd had every emotion carefully excised and replaced with obedience. My father is Draven Hale. My family died a long time ago. The words felt like bullets, each one finding a home in the soft places she'd tried to armor over with 13 years of running and hiding and pretending the past didn't exist. Hale's smile widened, showing teeth too white to be natural. You see perfect conditioning. 13 years of careful work. Kieran doesn't remember the Ashford name, doesn't remember you, doesn't remember anything except what I've taught him. He stroked Kieran's shoulder like a handler praising a good dog. He's my son now, my weapon, my legacy. You're wrong. Thea took a step forward. The floor creaked under her weight. The scar on your eyebrow. You got it climbing the oak tree in our backyard. You were racing me to the top. I won. You fell. Kieran's expression didn't change, but his hand, the one holding the gun, trembled, just slightly, just enough. I don't. You do, somewhere. Thea kept moving, slow, careful, each step measured. You remember Christmas mornings, hot chocolate with too many marshmallows because Mom could never say no to us. Dad teaching us chess at the same time, one game with 2 students. Mom singing while she cooked. Stop. The word came out strangled. The lullaby. You remember the lullaby? Thea started humming. The melody their mother had sung every night. The one that had lived in her dreams for 13 years, the only thing that still smelled like home. Kieran's gun lowered an inch. His eyes, green like hers, like their mother's, like spring breaking through winter, went wide. How do you? Because I sang it to you. Every night when you had nightmares about monsters under the bed. Until they took you away. Until the real monsters came. And then Thea sang the words. Soft. In English, not cipher code. Not because it was strategic, but because it was true. Because some things were too important for tactics. Hush now, twin star. The serpent guards your crown. Sleep now, twin heart. No shadows bring you down. Morning comes with light that burns the dark away. Until then, twin soul, let mother's voice keep you safe. The gun fell from Kieran's hand, hit the floor with a sound like thunder in a bottle. He dropped to his knees, just collapsed like someone had cut the strings holding him upright, and started crying. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief. 13 years of conditioning, 13 years of carefully constructed lies, all of it shattering like glass under a hammer. He sobbed deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere primal, somewhere Hale hadn't been able to reach with his drugs and his therapy and his careful reconstruction of reality. Thea ran to him, dropped beside him, pulled him into her arms. He clung to her like a drowning man finding shore, fingers digging into her back hard enough to leave marks. Thea, her name on his lips, broken, raw, real. I remember. God, I remember everything. I remember. He pulled back, eyes wild. He killed them. He killed Mom and Dad, and I watched, and he told me it was your fault that you'd betrayed us, that... I know. Thea pressed her forehead to his. But I'm here now. We're here, and we're getting out. Touching. Truly. The voice came from above them. Thea looked up. Draven Hale stood 5 feet away, gun steady, expression almost sad like a parent disappointed in a disobedient child. 13 years of work, undone by a lullaby. He shook his head. Your father used to say that sentiment was a weakness. I suppose he was right. He aimed at Kieran's head. But weakness can be corrected. The gunshot was thunder in the enclosed space. Pain exploded in Thea's shoulder as she threw herself in front of Kieran. The bullet meant for her brother's brain found her flesh instead, tearing through muscle and bone and nerve. She fell backward, Kieran's weight on top of her, the world tilting sideways. Hale stepped closer, gun lowering toward them both. Unfortunate. I'd hoped to salvage at least one of Silas's children, but you're both too broken to be useful now. The doors exploded inward with a concussive blast that shook dust from the ceiling and made Thea's ears ring. Caspian came through first, gun up, moving like violence given form. 3 shots in rapid succession, tight grouping, professional precision. Hale dove behind an overturned blackjack table. Returned fire. Muzzle flash lighting up his face in strobing snapshots. Alaric's men flooded the room like a tide. 20 operators in tactical gear moving with the synchronized efficiency of people who'd done this dance before. The casino became a war zone. Kieran rolled off. Thea grabbed his fallen gun and started shooting. Not at Caspian's team. At Hale's men emerging from side doors like roaches when you turn on the lights. His face was wet with tears, but his hands were steady. 13 years of training, of conditioning, of being turned into a weapon, all of it channeled toward the man who'd destroyed their family. Thea pressed her hand to her shoulder. Blood poured between her fingers, hot and slick. The room spun. Colors bled into each other like watercolors in rain. Caspian appeared above her face, carved from stone. Hold on. Medical team's coming. Kieran is fine. He's fighting with us. Your lullaby broke whatever Hale did to him. Something that might have been approval flickered across Caspian's face. You were right. Some bonds can't be erased. A massive explosion shook the building, not from inside the casino, from somewhere above. Thea felt it in her bones, in her teeth, in the way the floor bucked under her. What was that? Dylan Marsh just sent a message. Caspian's expression went grim. He's taking advantage of the chaos. Hit 3 family strongholds simultaneously. Victoria's headquarters, Marcus's dock operations, even one of our safe houses. He pulled out his phone, checked something, and his jaw tightened. The city's burning. Every family is at war. The old alliances are dead. Everything we knew is ending. Thea tried to focus, tried to think through the pain and the blood loss and the way her vision kept tunneling. Dylan. He knew. He knew we'd leak the files. He was waiting for this. Yes. He's been playing us from the start. The assassination attempts on you. The threats. He wanted us to start a war so he could... Another explosion. Closer this time. The ceiling cracked. Chunks of concrete rained down. Caspian grabbed Thea, hauled her up. She screamed as the movement tore at her shoulder. We need to move. Building's coming down. Across the room, Alaric had Hale pinned behind the overturned table. The old man's face was cold-focused, every bit the warrior he'd been before age and guilt had softened him. Draven, Alaric's voice cut through the chaos. It's over. You've got nowhere left to run. Hale's laugh echoed like broken glass. Over this is just beginning. You think you've won because you've got the girl and the boy. You've started a war that will consume everything you've built. We'll rebuild. Not if Dylan Marsh has anything to say about it. Hale rose slightly, gun coming up. He sends his regards, by the way. Says to tell you that the old world dies tonight, and the new world belongs to... Kieran's shot took him in the chest. Clean, professional, center mass. Hale looked down at the spreading red stain on his shirt, looked up at Kieran, smiled. Good boy. I taught you well. Then he collapsed. Kieran stood over the body gun, still raised, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. For Mom, he whispered. For Dad. For 13 years. Thea wanted to go to him. Wanted to tell him it was okay that he'd done the right thing, that some debts could only be paid in blood. But the world was fading. Gray creeping in from the edges of her vision. The pain in her shoulder transforming into something distant, almost abstract. Caspian's face swam into focus above her. Stay with me, Thea. Stay with me. Dylan. Stop Dylan. He's... I know we will, but you need to stay conscious. Can you do that? She tried to nod. Wasn't sure if she succeeded. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Kieran kneeling beside her, tears still wet on his face, reaching for her hand. The last thing she heard was Caspian's voice, tight with something that might have been fear. Don't you dare die on me, Ashford. Not when we just got you back. Then nothing. Thea woke to white. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets that smelled like antiseptic and industrial detergent. Hospital. Or the Graves family's version of one, a medical wing in the estate that probably cost more than most actual hospitals. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her shoulder, sharp enough to steal her breath. Easy. The voice came from her left. Kieran sat in a chair beside the bed. He looked different. Older somehow, despite the fact that they were twins, and time should have marked them the same. His eyes held weight they hadn't carried before, the weight of remembering, of knowing, of having killed the man who'd raised him. How long? Her voice came out rough, unused. 36 hours. Bullet shattered your collarbone, nicked an artery. They had to go in twice to stop the bleeding. Thea processed that. A day and a half. Unconscious while the city tore itself apart. What happened after? Kieran's jaw tightened. War. Real war. Not the careful, controlled violence the families used to practice. Actual chaos. He stood, walked to the window. Dylan Marsh moved fast, hit every family while they were distracted fighting each other. Victoria Cross is dead. Marcus Bishop is in hiding. Half the council is gone. Thea's chest went tight. Caspian Alaric. Alive. Barely. Dylan hit the estate 6 hours after we got you out of the casino. 24 men. Full assault. Kieran turned to face her. Caspian held them off, but Alaric took a bullet to the spine. He's paralyzed from the waist down. The words landed like blows. Alaric, the patriarch, the king, reduced to a wheelchair. Where's Caspian now? Coordinating the counteroffensive. Dylan's holed up in what used to be Victoria's headquarters. Declared himself head of a new council. Says the old families are finished. That he's building something better. Kieran's expression was bleak. He's winning, Thea. Without the council united, without the old alliances, he's picking us off one by one. Thea closed her eyes. Thought about her father's letter. About being better. About making violence unnecessary. Thought about how spectacularly she'd failed. She'd wanted to save Kieran. Instead, she'd started a war that was burning the city to ash. There's something else. Kieran's voice went quiet. The USB drive. The one from the safety deposit box. The recordings of what Hale did to me. What about it? Dylan has the originals. He's been leaking them, piece by piece, showing the world what the families are capable of, turning public opinion against us. Kieran's hands clenched. He's using my torture as propaganda. Thea's eyes snapped open. He was the one who sent us to that second box. He wanted us to find the copies so we'd know he had the originals, so we'd know he could destroy us whenever he wanted. Yes. The door opened. Caspian walked in and Thea's breath caught. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 36 hours. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw shadowed with stubble, suit rumpled in a way she'd never seen before. But when he saw her awake, something in his face shifted. Relief, maybe, or just the momentary suspension of whatever weight he'd been carrying. "You're up." He crossed to the bed. "How's the shoulder?" "Functional." "How's the city bow?" "Burning." He pulled up a chair, sat. "Dylan's consolidated power faster than we anticipated. He's got Bishop's docks, Victoria's smuggling routes, half of what used to be marsh territory. And he's making moves on our holdings." Thea struggled to sit up. Kieran moved to help, propping pillows behind her. "What's our play?" Caspian looked at her for a long moment, then at Kieran, then back. "We have two options. Option one, we run. I've got resources outside the city, enough money to disappear. Start over somewhere Dylan's reach doesn't extend." He leaned forward. "Option two, we fight. But to win, we'd need to do something the families have never done before." "What's that?" "Unite. Every remaining family, every crew, every operator who's not already pledged to Dylan." His expression was grim. "We'd need to put aside every grudge, every territorial dispute, every old wound. Become one organization under one banner." "Under whose authority?" Kieran asked. "Who leads a unified family?" Caspian looked at Thea. "The last Ashford and the last Graves. Together. Joint leadership. Equal authority." The proposal hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Thea thought about her father's letter, about being better than him, about making violence unnecessary. But some things couldn't be solved with mercy. Some enemies only understood strength. "There's a third option." Her voice came out steady despite the pain radiating from her shoulder. "We give Dylan what he wants." Both men stared at her. "What he wants is power, control, to be seen as the man who brought order out of chaos." Thea met Caspian's eyes. "So we let him have it, publicly surrender, acknowledge his authority, bend the knee." Kieran's face went dark. "Are you insane? After everything?" "And while he's celebrating his victory," Thea continued, "while he's consolidating his new empire and making enemies of everyone he just conquered, we rebuild. Quietly, carefully, using Dad's files, using the connections the Ashford name still carries, using every resource the Graves family has hidden over 3 decades. She looked at Caspian. "We let him think he's won. And then when he's overextended and vulnerable and surrounded by people who hate him, we take everything back in one move." Silence filled the room. Caspian's eyes narrowed, calculating, running probabilities. "The long game." "Yes? It could take months, maybe years. I've been hiding for 13 years. I can wait a little longer." Kieran shook his head. "Dylan's not stupid. He'll see through it. He'll know we're planning something." "He'll suspect," Thea agreed, "but he won't be able to prove it. And more importantly, he won't be able to resist. His ego won't let him. He wants to be the king who brought the Ashford and Graves families to heel." She smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "So we let him have his crown. For now." Caspian stood, walked to the window, looked out at the grounds where his father used to walk, where power used to mean something clear and certain. "Your father would have hated this plan. I know. He would have said it was cowardice, that Ashfords don't bend the knee to anyone. My father's dead, and his way got him killed." Thea's voice was quiet but carried steel. "I'm not interested in dying for pride. I'm interested in winning. And winning means being smarter than our enemies." Caspian turned to face her. "If we do this, if we commit to this, there's no going back. We surrender everything publicly. Our holdings, our reputation, our father's legacies. To get it all back twice over. Maybe. Or maybe we lose everything and Dylan wins anyway. Then we'd better make sure we don't lose." Kieran looked between them. "I just got my memory back. Just got my sister back, And you're asking me to trust you both with a plan that could get us all killed. Thea reached for his hand, squeezed. I'm asking you to trust that we're not alone anymore, that we're not running, that we're not victims. She met his eyes. I'm asking you to trust that the Ashford family isn't dead. It's just getting started. Kieran stared at her, then at Caspian, then down at their joined hands. Finally, he nodded. Okay. The long game. He looked up. But when we take Dylan down, I want to be there. I want him to know it was us. You'll be there, Caspian promised. We all will. He extended his hand to Thea. Partners, until the job is done. She took it. Until the city is ours. Outside New York burned. Dylan Marsh sat in what used to be Victoria Cross's office and counted his victories. The old families scattered, the old rules broken. And in a medical wing in Westchester, 3 people, a wounded heir, a paralyzed king's son, and a boy who'd been broken and remade, began planning the longest revenge in the city's history. The shy waitress was dead. The queen was learning to be patient, and patience Thea Ashford was about to prove was the most dangerous weapon of all.